Good afternoon, and welcome to the Strategic Roadmap Convocation. Before we begin this important update, I want to share our land acknowledgement. Northern Arizona University sits at the base of the San Francisco Peaks, on homelands sacred to Native Americans throughout the region. We honor their past, present, and future generations who have lived here for millennia and will forever call this place home. Thank you for being here with us today as we present to you the latest regarding our strategic roadmap process. I am pleased that today we'll be sharing with you a second draft of the strategic roadmap, a document that is the product of significant engagement and participation of our NAU community members following the release of Draft 1 on October 14th. Of course, the process started before then, at the start of the semester, with the goal of refining our institutional focus, pacing our work, organizing it, and ultimately committing NAU to the pursuit of becoming a national leader in providing equitable post-secondary value to our students and the communities they represent. Before we dive into some of the specifics of draft number 2, I want to revisit the idea of equitable post-secondary value. For most of you in attendance, it is not a question about the why behind the value of getting a college degree. However, in our society today, due to many factors, including the pandemic, the question of the value of getting a post-secondary credential is certainly there. We know that a post-secondary degree has immense value and potential, fostering economic mobility, equity, and transformative outcomes that are realized generationally. But we must articulate our value proposition to our students, to our communities, and to stakeholders who support our institution to ensure that what we stand for in higher ed is fulfilled. And that is why we need to explicitly articulate how we will support and deliver the value. And that is why when we started this work, we charged the roadmap, the strategic roadmap process as follows on my August 31st message to campus. To this end, as we advance our mission in the years ahead, we will do the hard yet important work that will establish NAU as a national leader in supporting and delivering equitable post-secondary value to students and the communities they represent. We must make sure that this value is accessible to all, regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, where they live, who they love, what they aspire to, the location in which they pursue their dreams, any technological barriers that may be in place, and of course, the financial ability of them to meet their full potential. And that is why we are committed to not only delivering on post-secondary educational value, but also making sure that in doing so, we're not only serving well our students and communities, but also drawing up a blueprint for other colleges and universities across the country who are also interested in figuring out how to drive equitable outcomes for all who they serve. The strategic roadmap gives us a framework to guide institutional work in the years ahead. But it is important to note that our work hasn't stopped. We have been working on this strategic roadmap now for several weeks, but we have also been advancing many important initiatives that are aligned with our values since the beginning of this semester. But the reality is that if we are to ensure success moving forward, given the magnitude of the challenges we face, we need to ensure that there is a certain coherence to the actions that align our work. And so it is that as we move this roadmap towards its conclusion later this academic year, we want to make sure that it allows us to drive action. This is not an exercise to collect dust on a shelf. This is a call to action to ensure that we are quickly advancing critical work streams that make a measurable difference in lives. We want to make sure that this strategic roadmap fosters accountability. Often, we have grand aspirations, but they must be supported by concrete deliverables. In calling ourselves to act, we must also challenge ourselves to be accountable in realizing our goals. The strategic roadmap is also meant to pace our work. Equitable post-secondary value is all-encompassing. With a strong roadmap in place, we can target specific goals through objectives, strategies, and tactics that will allow us to make progress on this important front. And finally, it is meant to realize our collective vision. Through the process that we will advance our collective vision through, the actions and strategies articulated in our roadmap will be fundamental to our ability to do so. I will now turn to my colleague, Laurie Dixon, who will address some of the process that has been used to date and what we will see in this new draft of the strategic roadmap. Thank you very much for your participation. Laurie?
Great. Thank you, President Cruz-Rivera. I'm happy to share that our roadmap process exemplifies our commitment to university governance. We are collectively charting a path forward to prioritize and guide our future investments of time, talent, energy, and funding. I want to highlight a little bit more of our philosophy for the process, or characteristics, if you will. The process is honoring the past by leveraging previous plans and existing programs and initiatives. We have intentionally built in the consultation and communication to ensure that it is a collaborative and a transparent process. It is structured to be an iterative process with multiple opportunities to weigh in and shape the roadmap. This includes multiple engagement vehicles for participation, such as the listening sessions, emails, Idea Scale, which is the crowdsourcing tool that we're using, and an anonymous survey. The process is responsive to feedback. We're viewing adjustments, course corrections as valued as a virtue, not as a weakness. We want to be responsive. And lastly, with the philosophy component, I want to highlight that we need to have alignment between the other work streams that we have, as President Cruz-Rivera highlighted. We have ABOR goal setting and metrics, we have fiscal and cultural realities, and we want to make sure that we're focused on action and accountability. So we're driving results. And with that, I highlight that. So we might have to modify some of the language that we're using to ensure that we're meeting the need of action and accountability and alignment. Let's highlight a little bit of what we learned in engagement phase number 1. I'm not going to reiterate the details that were provided in the president's email from October 29th, but note, we've had over 5,000 engagements in Idea Scale. We've had dozens of emails and responses in our survey, whether they be with reflecting the whole roadmap or specific goals. We had over 400 people signed up to share and listen and participate in the listening sessions that we had. It's clear that the NAU community is invested in the ideas in the roadmap and already are moving very quickly to specific actions and strategies that will help us advance the work. So it's really exciting that we've had so much engagement thus far. As you'll hear in a little bit from our working group leads, the working groups have reflected on all the engagement, the participation and feedback. They've synthesized and integrated the thoughtful engagement that they've received from our community. As we move into draft 2, we have a couple key updates that I want to draw your attention to. Guiding principles. As you know, we have already 3 existing principles: distinctive excellence, diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and trust and transparency. In addition to those 3 guiding principles, we're adding 2 more. One, the articulation of our commitment to Native Americans, and also another guiding principle that will highlight our emerging strength and commitment to our Hispanic serving institution status. With the guiding principles, we want these to infuse all actions and all efforts that we have at the institution. With respect to the goals, as was highlighted in a previous email, we're adding a new working group, Commitment to Native American, and it reflects goal number 3 from our current strategic plan. The President and Vice President for Native American Initiatives, Anne Marie Chichili, will comment on this in a few minutes. Objectives. Throughout this process, it's a process of funneling down from a large number of objectives to a fewer number that will be part of the final roadmap. So the objectives for draft 2 have gone from about 20 per goal to 8 to 10 per goal, and that will be highlighted by our working group leads. The other thing I want to highlight here is strategies. As I noted before, our campus community has really been focused on driving action. That's good. That's the whole goal of the roadmap. So we wanted to adjust our language a little bit and rename the objectives to be objectives and strategies for each goal area to capture the action orientation of the input that we've received. Moving on to other areas of institutional priority. As I've highlighted, we have a funneling down from a larger number of objectives and strategies to the fewer number of objectives and strategies. Those ideas, even though they're not going to be included in draft 2 or draft 3 or draft 4, it's great thinking and we don't want to lose those ideas. They'll be preserved and memorialized and used to inform, guide, and likely be integrated into other plans, whether they're divisional, unit, program, department, and we'll work to identify resources and support to move some of those efforts forward. So before I turn it back to the president, I'll highlight a little bit of where we've been and where we're going. So the fall timeline. We launched at the beginning of the semester in late August, and we have focused very primarily on 3 drafts, as we've highlighted. And we aim to, by the end of the semester, have a robust draft of refined objectives and strategies, 3 to 5 per goal. So you can see we're 3/4 of the way through the semester, so we're making good progress with lots of engagement. Moving into spring semester, we'll shift gears a little bit here from draft 3, which we'll have by the end of the semester. We'll have a metrics working group work on defining the metrics and targets, once again focusing on action and accountability. And concurrently with the metrics work group, we'll expand some vetting to move beyond our smaller NAU community to a larger community, pulling in supporters, alumni, partners, and the like in what we might call a readership phase. And then we'll move in with that feedback to draft number 4. We will have draft number 4 with, as you can imagine, an engagement phase number 4 as well for continuing the dialogue and collaborative iterative process that we have. Then we'll move forward with a plan to the Arizona Board of Regents for formal adoption. And beyond that adoption, we'll move ahead to more concrete actions and actions team to fully implement the plan to fulfill these important goals. So prior to shifting to the working group leads, I'll turn it back to President Cruz Rivera.
Thank you, Lori. With this timeline for action clear in our minds, it is also a moment of reflection on the relationship between the strategic plan and the strategic roadmap. As you all know, the strategic roadmap has been developed in parallel with the existing strategic plan and other plans, our diversity plan, our enrollment management plan, our sustainability plan, etc. However, as we have moved forward with this process, it has become evident that we need to have a single unified guiding strategic document that will propel us into the next few years. But because the strategic plan is foundational to the roadmap, the transition is easy, as you can see here in this slide. The strategic plan is integrated into the roadmap, but the roadmap is a focused refinement that elevates action and accountability. When we reach the implementation phase, the plan will sunset and the roadmap will take its place as the definitive set of goals and objectives that will guide our high-level actions at the university. I wanted to make sure that we clarify this pivot now because it is important to ensure that as we set targets and objectives, that they are uniform and consistent. The roadmap is a guided pathway for our institutional future. With this framework and contextualization, I will now cede the floor to our working group leads. Each will share a bit about their goal, the dimensions encompassed within it, and the objectives and strategies that have been refined for this draft, focusing on clusters of strategies. So without further ado, I turn it to Dr. Karen Pugliese, Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs, to lead us in an overview of goal number 1, inclusive academic excellence. Provost Pugliese.
Thank you, President Cruz Rivera. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you today about the work of the group that's been working on the first goal of the roadmap. It's been a great pleasure to facilitate a very enthusiastic group that pursued development of draft objectives for the university community to consider. This work group includes, in addition to myself, Teresa Agube, Kevin Trainer, Melissa Armstrong, and Kevin Gustafson. I thank all of them for their fantastic contributions to our effort to reach this point in the process. The goal that our group has focused on, inclusive academic excellence, is a concept that was originally developed, I think, by AUC&U, and as it was originally conceived, it was actually institutional in its scope. In the context of this roadmap, we narrowed to a point our focus on the academic dimensions of inclusive academic excellence. We understand this goal to mean that NAU will develop a portfolio of degree and certificate programs that offer maximum value to our diverse learners and the communities that we serve. That our programs at all levels and across modalities will be designed to equip graduates for a meaningful life of professional success, impactful citizenship, and global engagement. Graduates will experience upward mobility as their communities benefit from greater economic prosperity. NAU's pedagogical excellence will be distinctive for its inclusiveness and its transformative impact on our students. We were really pleased by the rich feedback that we received from the first draft of our goals through the idea scale and our listening sessions. Our group monitored activity on the idea scale, and we also reflected in great detail on the comments and additional ideas that were generated through that, as well as the patterns of up and down votes on our draft objectives. In consideration of all that feedback, as well as an examination of potential areas of redundancy among the draft objectives we had in the first iteration, as well as across some of the different goals in the roadmap, we ended up eliminating some of our draft objectives. We consolidated others. And then we also edited in light of the particular kinds of feedback that we received around how to refine the ideas that were reflected in draft one. And we introduced a new objective that centered around an idea that was introduced in idea scale and that received a lot of community support. We consider that our objectives fall into three clusters. These were clusters that were identified by the group early on so that we could be sure that the draft objectives that we created mapped fully and comprehensively onto the goal. The first of these clusters is what we considered or called the learning experience. And really it refers to the combination of programs and pedagogy and how the objectives that we will pursue will strengthen the suite of programs and the forms of pedagogy that we will use within the university so as to best serve a diverse groups and populations of students and generate equitable outcomes. What you see here are the objectives in our second draft that fall under this learning experience category. In the next slide, you'll see the objectives in our second draft that fall under the second category that we considered, which is what we call learning structure and atmosphere. And here we were focused on how NAU would distinctively create an environment through its curriculum and through patterns of outcome that was inclusive. Our third category of outcomes in this second draft, is that which we referred to as focus on career. And these are objectives that really center on how through our curriculum and co-curriculum and pedagogies, we will promote development of capacities that are critical for career success and orient students to opportunities beyond the university to buoy their trajectory in their professional employment. We look forward to hearing from all of you yet again in the next phase of engagement during the listening session that we will hold next Tuesday, November 16th at 4 p.m. We'll be very keen to hear your feedback about the second draft of our objectives. It's now my pleasure to introduce the second group and goal facilitator, Annika Olson, who is the Vice President for Enrollment Management.
Thank you, Provost Pilacy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to present the second draft of goal number 2, equitable student access, momentum, graduation, and post-graduation success. The group that has been leading the feedback and facilitation are here on your screen. I argue that I have the best group. They've been amazing. And a special shout out to Tyler, who is our student on the committee, who is consistently bringing the student perspective and is always very much appreciated. Goal number 2 in the significant goal statement really focuses on accessibility for our historically underserved, underrepresented, and marginalized community, but really focuses on making sure, and in addition here from the amazing feedback we received from the listening session, the thumbs up, thumbs down voting in idea scale, as well as written comments directly to some of the facilitation group, as well as through the website, helped us add to our initial goal statement. So I definitely wanted to specifically point that out. That final sentence, to successfully execute this goal, we will always ask what is best for students when making decisions. Because as a student-focused access institution, we have to begin with the student at the center. Our goal, we've broken down into 3 broad areas, the first being access, and that encompasses 3 different strategies as we see it in this draft, and really focusing on looking at our traditional systems and how we've traditionally brought students in and through the institution, and understanding that we need to be inclusive and understand and dismantle access and completion barriers in some of our policies and practices and systems that we have. And we need to not only just focus on the Flagstaff campus, but our NAU, UMA, and statewide sites, and our partnerships with community colleges across the state. The second broad area is momentum. And traditionally, and we had some discussion about this, is this retention or is this momentum? And we love the term momentum because students are always moving, just as like we are as an institution, always evolving and moving to the next thing. And so momentum seemed right. And I wanted to really point out 2.4 because a lot of the discussion in the listening session focused on this particular area. And it was really making sure that our faculty and our staff are well cared for and their well-being is where it needs to be to bring the best for our students. So we are both in and out of the classroom supporting them in their educational endeavors. The final area of goal 2 is graduation and post-graduation success. And we know that providing an equitable post-secondary value, economic and social mobility is that goal. And we need to make sure we're enhancing that in providing students experiences in their NAU experience and design, as my colleague Wendy Brune would say, their NAU life design to make sure they are successful when they exit the institution. But they also are staying connected through alumni engagement. We know now that value matters more than ever in higher education. And I'm excited to be a part of this road mapping process and to engage with all of you in our listening session next Monday. I would now like to kick it over to Dr. Jason Wilder to talk through goal number 3.
All right, thank you so much, Annika. I will try to match Annika's level of enthusiasm. I have been really thrilled to work on goal 3, which is the goal that is focused on impactful research, scholarly, and creative activities. In my work as the lead facilitator for this group, I've been very fortunate to have 4 co-facilitators who have really been wonderful to work with, and I'd like to highlight them in the roles at the university real quickly. First, Christina Baccio is a doctoral student in educational leadership and has done a wonderful job and been a very active participant as our student representative. Second, we have Heather Williamson, who is an associate professor in the occupational therapy department, and she is also a member of the Center for Health Equity Research and is based at the Phoenix Biomedical Campus. And I want to highlight that one of the themes of our conversation was to be inclusive when we're talking about research, scholarship, and creative activities to our statewide presence. And so Heather's perspective on that was very valuable. Next, we have Dawn Birdsell, who is a senior research scientist in the Pathogen and Microbiome Institute. Her work has been deeply involved in facilitating undergraduate engagement and research, and so her perspective was incredibly valuable. And finally, Jennifer Martinez, a professor in the Applied Physics and Material Science group, and also the director of the Center for Materials Interfaces and Research Applications, really providing some subject matter expertise. So as other lead facilitators have indicated, we have our overall goal statement, which we have been refining through the working to define objectives and strategies that we have been refining through the first and second round of feedback. Our goal, as we have articulated, is to be broadly supportive of both research, scholarship, and creative activities, and to be sure that we are doing so in a way that engages the diverse communities that we serve, that advances interdisciplinary knowledge, provides transformative learning opportunities, and contributes to solving problems of global life. So that overall framework we use to define strategies that we have separated into 4 different buckets or clusters of objectives and strategies. The first of which is to really highlight our emphasis and commitment on diversity of scholarship. And so here we are really thinking about diversity quite broadly. First, the diversity of our faculty, who are really taking a leadership role in our scholarship, research, and creative endeavors. And so making sure that we are doing our best to recruit a diverse faculty, also supporting all faculty who are doing high quality work. Looking to value research, scholarship, and creative endeavors that are diverse in their form and that incorporate traditional and indigenous knowledge. This is something that we've not called out specifically in the past as a focus of emphasis. And also, of course, to value research that involves community engagement. This is an area of growth at NAU, and it's a real way that NAU delivers value to the state that we want to highlight. The second cluster of work that we focused on was really student participation. And we thought about student participation in multiple different dimensions. One is really to reduce barriers for participation. We know that oftentimes we have offered for students research scholarship opportunities that involve donation of student time, frankly. And so making sure that we are respectful of the ways in which students are limited and constrained, and that we reduce the barriers so that all of our students have the opportunities for these high impact learning experiences. We also want to make sure that we highlight the need and importance for mentorship. And that culture of mentorship is something that extends from our experienced faculty, not only to our students, both graduate and undergraduate students, but also to junior colleagues, so that we are really building an environment and ecosystem at NAU where we foster continued development in this area. And finally, we want to invest in opportunities for students to engage in research that really span our presence across the state. So again, not to privilege the Flagstaff Mountain campus experience in this, but to find ways for our students to engage no matter where and how they interact with it. The next area of objectives is categorized it as resources and support for scholarly activities. And this really reflected, or some of the wording here really reflects the input that we received during our listening sessions. which were well attended and diverse in their membership, and so really highly valued by our group. And so here, really, we want to make sure that we are providing resources in the form of faculty time and incentives for faculty to recognize excellence in the execution of research scholarship and creative activities, and then also to provide the institutional support that is necessary in order to be successful in these areas. And institutional support here, we are defining very broadly to include things that, such as library assets, human infrastructure, the actual physical infrastructure, to make sure that those resources are compatible with our needs and ability to deliver. The final area that we wanted to highlight was the impact on our communities. And so one of the sort of defining and distinctive characteristics of NAU is its relationship with our regional communities in Northern Arizona. And so we want to make sure that we are making the most of opportunities to include partnerships with those diverse communities, including tribal nations, to develop outstanding research scholarship and creative activities that actually really enhance the lives and communities that we serve. So with that, I will turn this over to our next working group lead, who is Gabe Montano, who will talk about our fourth area of focus.
Okay, let's see if that's working. Okay, I'm not sure if my video is working, but it looks like the sound is. So we'll go ahead and get started. All right, so thanks, Jason. Yeah, so this is goal 4, enhance practices for recruiting, retaining, and developing quality, mission-driven, diverse faculty and staff. And again, I'd like to start as well by acknowledging the team of facilitators that I've been able to work with. So I'm Gabe Montano. I am the Chief Diversity Fellow for Northern Arizona University, as well as a Professor of Applied Physics and Material Science here at NAU. We've had a phenomenal team. Jessica Watson has been our student representative and is a graduate student in SBS, and also a Flagstaff native, so was able to bring her experiences not just as an NAU student, but also as someone from the local communities. Sanja Malawalia has also been with us. She is a professor of women and gender studies and director there. Lauren Copeland Glenn is also a Flagstaff native. So this was actually a very nice thing to have so much input from folks that have a lifetime of experience here. Lauren's a program manager with the Equity and Access Office and with the Center for the University Access and Inclusion here at NAU. And Josh Mackey, who is Vice President of Human Resources and does a number of jobs. So it's been a phenomenal team that have been able to direct and facilitate these activities and our interaction with the NAU community. Okay, so what is goal 4? So this is goal 4 again, right? And this is our goal statement. NAU will implement strategies throughout its employment practices to support the recruitment, retention, development, and promotion of a high quality, mission-driven workforce. This workforce will reflect the demographics and integrate the identities of the local communities, Arizona and beyond. NAU will advance post-secondary value to students and the communities they represent by committing to and fostering an institutional workforce culture that understands justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion are embedded in excellence. And one of the things that I want to highlight here in this statement is that there is very deliberate language and intentional language used. And it really sets the crux of what we are attempting to do here, which is to accurately refine and define what we are doing and what the goal here is that what we are trying to accomplish via this goal. And so we're looking at a culture shift, and that's reflected not only in the objectives, but also in the language of this goal statement and what we are attempting to do here. Next slide. So how did we organize this? Well, similar to the other goals, we've taken the information that we've learned. This process of crowdsourcing was extremely effective, and we look forward to further interaction and engagement with the community, because it allowed us to take a look at these initial objectives and to refine those into our objectives and strategies moving forward, and also see this coalescing of common themes and strategies that were resonating. And these were also consistent with those strategies that resonated in our town hall, and also that we would see populate through the crowdsourcing objectives. So that first one is really this idea of recruitment, retention, development, and promotion. This is critical and essential to moving forward. And there are 3 objective strategies that that actually define this area: intentional and focused recruitment, retention, development, promotion of an inclusive and diverse, high quality and mission-driven workforce at all levels. This really underlies the crux of this area, this focus area that we're trying to do. Along with that, a measurable increase across all academic, non-academic departments, units, and administrations in the recruitment, hiring, retention for minoritized and underrepresented communities, with an emphasis on Native American Indigenous communities. So we're able to take a combination of objectives and coalesce them into one that still accurately define what we are trying to do, that resonate with all these ideas of creating a more representative workforce of NAU, of Northern Arizona, of Flagstaff, and of Arizona. Okay, and then lastly here, develop and offer alternative paths for educational requirements into workforce positions and career advancement. And this is something that came into play not only through our discussion with the objectives, but we had a very good discussion about this in the town hall, about what these should look like. And again, through some of the information that we see from there, making sure this wasn't just into entry-level workforce positions, but throughout. And that does resonate more clearly with what the goals here. The next area of focus really cluster under this idea of fostering an inclusive and equitable institutional culture. And again, you'll hear a lot about culture. That is really what we need to do. If we do not reflect the culture in an accurate way, and a lot of it beyond that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It will not have the impact that we hope to have. So here we also have 3 objectives/strategies associated with this. The first, which is to instill and foster an institutional culture of shared responsibility. This is consistent, again, with what the Diversity Strategic Plan has initiated, and where this came to be, where DEIJ initiatives are central and universally engaged across all areas through universal training, policies, practices, recognition, and value of participation toward increased culture, competence, awareness. So there's a lot of key words here that are important. Universal, right? This needs to be universal throughout the campus. We need to make sure that a good policy is, if good, is instituted across the entirety of the campus. And also this idea of cultural competence and awareness, right? And making sure that those are where we are aiming to be, and the value. It is so important that we have value associated with participation if these are to be meaningful activities. Incentivize DEIJ-centered learning, service, and scholarship, right? We need to make sure that if this really is an area that we are focused on, and we are as an institute, that we incentivize this and the work here. Cultivate working environments where diverse identities and experiences are included, valued, respected, and fostered. Again, every word matters here. And this is something that we're going to keep working on, not just as a facilitated group, but we're hoping that as we have more feedback with the NAU community, this will grow as well. And identify and remove barriers to access for individuals with disabilities by implementing wide-scale universal design and universal design for learning approaches. Okay, this is also critical and key to us moving forward. Next one. Our last area is in promoting mechanisms of faculty and staff support. And again, I want to acknowledge and highlight and thank the community, because this is something that very much resonated. The idea of not just promoting these mechanisms, but we really need to have support in how we take these from words into actions moving forward. Prioritizing investments in faculty and staff compensation, enhanced medical and other non-salary benefits. Again, this is a culmination of multiple objectives from the first iteration that have created this objective strategy. Implement and assess workload policies and practices, including a flexible workplace, promote and support participation by faculty and staff, and stress management and self-care. Again, it's very important that we execute this and make sure that we are incorporating, assessing, and incorporating the means by which we are going to make sure that we support our faculty and staff moving forward. And lastly, implement faculty and staff support programs such as campus-wide faculty and staff mentoring programs, emphasizing regular supervisor employment engagement, and focus support on minoritized and underrepresented faculty and staff. Okay, again, it's about support and making sure that we are creating the environment that is not only going to maximize the ability of our workforce to work, but create the environment that's necessary, one that resonates with self-care and stress management and faculty support. Again, the last thing I'd like to say about this before we move on to goal 5 is that there were so many great strategies that have been sent to us as well. And we have those. Those have not been lost. They are going to be now the cornerstone for how we then facilitate this, all of these objectives that we have moving forward. So I just want to thank the NAU community as well for all their contributions. And we're looking forward to the continued work in that realm, because we think it's really creating a document that will resonate to create the workforce and work-life environment that we all aim to create. So I'll stop there and we'll move on to our next goal.
Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate that. Goal 5 is strong stewardship of place and demonstrated engagement with our communities. And I am Christy Farley, Vice President of External Affairs and Partnerships for NAU. And I want to appreciate the group of facilitators that I have worked with throughout this process to bring you the recommendations today after they have been worked through all of the campus engagement process to date. So Dimitri Aquinto Marston is an economics major from California who is serving as an NAU Residence Hall advisor and our student representative. Kathleen McGeever is the chair of NAU's theater department. Chrissy Spear is a manager in the NAU Career Services Development Office, and Josh Mayer is the Associate VP of Community Relations. And thank you to this team that has worked so hard to come to the recommendations that we have to date. So related to goal 5, I just want to go back to highlight, you've seen several themes throughout many of these. And I just want to thank President Cruz Rivera for sort of focusing us all on the central theme of supporting and delivering post-secondary educational value, which enhances the mobility, both for individual students and the communities within which our graduates reside. So it is that partnership for individual mobility and the mobility of communities, which focuses on the strong stewardship of place and demonstrated engagement. And you'll see that theme throughout this around a mutually beneficial relationship that NAU seeks to engage in with our local and regional community to enhance the value of our educational experiences and increase individual, communal, cultural, and economic vitality. And NAU will work side by side with a variety of partners, all listed here, to advance our students' success, support volunteerism for public good, provide impactful services and research, and directly benefit the well-being of our communities. So that is the overall goal statement within which we worked to develop objectives and strategies, which I'd like to review with you this afternoon. The first of which is grouped under the area of partnering with communities. Many planning efforts have shared impacts and should be considered with our partner agencies and communities in mind. Additionally, as we develop critical initiatives at the university, we can be more impactful in those initiatives if we develop them in collaboration with the communities in which we live and serve. So for example, you will see that the first 5.1 is seek and encourage broad community input on university decisions that may impact areas beyond our campus boundaries. Those include things like as we develop our master plan and other areas that we will consider the impact on our community and seek their input as we develop those plans. And then the second is around specifically an area that is top of mind right now on climate and sustainability. But I would point out that also as we have taken in recent activities around COVID testing and tracing, that we have worked hand in hand with our community on those types of activities in order to address public health in a more impactful way. The next critical grouping area is around promoting community service. So to encourage and develop a culture of volunteerism and service throughout the NAU campus, including students and employees, recognizing and celebrating community engagement broadly as an important civic responsibility. And so there was quite a bit of discussion about not only how we encourage and develop this culture, but also how we celebrate it throughout our campus and throughout our different departments. So there'll be more to come on this important topic. And then maximizing our Flagstaff location to serve as a living lab, addressing broader issues of sustainability and environmental consequence, and utilizing the unique attributes of statewide campus locations to support similar community challenges and opportunities. And I want to thank all of those who engaged in this conversation to remind the group about the importance of our statewide campus locations and their ability to address similar community challenges as we integrate them into all of the aspects. This was a particular comment through the ideal scale comments. And then also seek, encourage, and expand on NAU's rich arts and cultural experiences as drivers of economic opportunity and community engagement in the region and state, and provide an inviting campus atmosphere that welcomes community participation. So throughout this discussion, we've heard that we want to make sure that there are no barriers to inviting individuals outside of campus onto the campus, and that will be a constant conversation as we move forward. The next group is Serving Arizona, which is part of our public university mission, and starts with Arizona attracting with NAU attracting a high number of Arizona resident students and maximizing the connections of all of our students within the communities that we serve. So you'll see increasing our internship and clinical placement opportunities, as well as connecting graduates with employers in Arizona to benefit both the student learning objectives and employer needs. And you'll see with particular attention to underserved communities and areas of workforce shortages. We talked about from the area brought to us by the ideal scale input, advancing strong academic programs with particular emphasis in physical and mental health care needs to advance social mobility of both individuals into high wage careers and in meeting critical workforce areas. And then a key area of K-12 connections, always providing solutions for communities outside of metropolitan areas, fostering student-led research and creative activity, overlapping with some of the things that you heard from Dr. Wilder. And then also as an issue that came through Idea Scale and was for NAU to continue to advocate for increased broadband access to remote areas of the state to improve educational opportunities and access as we partner with government and private entities to support the expansion of both access and technology. We took in many of the comments that we heard from both the listening sessions and Idea Scale. The next step, as you heard from Dr. Dixon, will be to move from this grand idea of 10 down to 3 to 5 objectives and strategies. So we will be working to condense this effort into some of the broader areas. And as Gabe mentioned, know that none of these will be lost as we work to put specific metrics and efforts in place on some of these particular ideas. Our next listening session is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 16th at 11 o'clock a.m. And we look forward to continuing the conversation. I'd like to introduce Bjorn Flugstedt for Goal 6 on effective stewardship of financial, physical, and virtual resources.
Thanks, Christy. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and provide a little bit of commentary on Goal 6. As previously done, I'd like to thank the facilitators on Group 6 who have joined me in working through the feedback that we've received from the listening session, from the idea scale feedback, as well as from email feedback. Joe Whitney, our student representative, and Mark Salvatore, our faculty representative, have been very instrumental in providing good feedback. And Megan Cunningham and Becky McGaw, staff feedback from the budget office and contracting and purchasing risk management perspectives as well. So as we've talked about, Goal 6 really talks about resources and how we invest our resources to maintain our infrastructure so that we are enabled and in position to do all the things that we've talked about already here today. And we need to maintain and invest in that infrastructure, ranging from physical infrastructure, technology, financial infrastructure, and doing so in a sustainable way. So as you can read, we need to have resources in order to be able to be in a position to implement and pursue all the great ideas that we've come up through this process. And we also talk about in the second piece of this statement, having and developing, implementing an operational framework to be able to sustainably beautify, modernize our infrastructure. So we've taken the idea scale feedback and I'll make note of some key changes and key incorporations that we've incorporated into these items. We have 4 clusters. One of them, the first one that you can see, is financial. We need to basically increase and have a sustainable revenue resource pie, so to speak. So that first one really talks about having resource availability so that we can be able to invest in all of the different ideas that have come through. And then the second item within this financial cluster is related to how we allocate those resources. So the first being increase our available resources, and then the second one being able to have a review process to make sure that our resources are being deployed, they're being reviewed, and that they align with our university strategic initiatives. Our second cluster really relates to operations and processes. So you can read through that we will be reviewing areas for opportunity for improvement, including assessment of those processes. We will have an organizational structure that fosters strong governance practices that will enhance the collaboration for the university effectively advancing the strategic priorities. One key note is that we have modified the governance practice reference to eliminate the data specific, because it is a broader governance practice that we wanted to reference. And I would draw your attention to the first item related to personnel infrastructure and the fact that all of us need to be engaged and serve as stewards of the resources that NAU has. Our third cluster relates to IT, and in developing a multi-year IT information technology project and system priority plan, identifying the funding. We've seen how important IT infrastructure is, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's classroom technology, to enable the university to run each day. And having a longer forward-looking plan and funding plan is an item for our objective/strategy. Our final category is environmental sustainability. You can see that we have an objective related to completing NAU's climate action plan to embed environmental sustainability into the university's operational decision-making, including a goal for carbon neutrality. And we have a master plan reference completing that addresses growth, land use, deferred maintenance, and doing so in a sustainable way. Our next listening session for group number 6 is scheduled for next Tuesday morning at 10. We look forward to having an opportunity to review this 5 to 10, and ours are 8 objectives, and thinking through how we can consolidate that down to 3 to 5. And with that, I'm going to introduce the lead facilitator for group 7, Anne-Marie Cicilli, who's the interim vice president for Native American Initiatives.
Thank you, Bjorn, and thank you, everybody. I am Anne-Marie Cicilli, and I want to thank you for joining us today. I'd like to introduce myself according to my clan systems. My disgusting additional and they control adult children before I use Nasha. So I just placed myself among my Navajo people, and I know I have a couple of minutes to get through this commitment. I just want to let you know that I've been working here with the Institute for Tribal Environmental for 10 years, tribal environmental professionals for 10 years now. And I want to acknowledge all of you who are on the Zoom, also acknowledge tribal leaders who are on Zoom, and also members of the Native American Advisory Board. Thank you all for joining us. As you know, we've been working on the strategic roadmap, and we've been working through some difficult times. I really want to say thank you for your patience. And as we know, we've now come to including goal 7 in the roadmap. And as part of this goal, we had an open campus-wide nomination process to establish a new work group. And I'm happy to announce the new members. All of them have accepted their positions, and so they're now part of the work group. I will be the lead facilitator, Marie Makawa, who will be our student representative. Dr. Joseph Martin will be our faculty representative. Dr. Ora Merrick Martinez will be our staff representative, and Dr. Elise Ali Joseph will be our expert representative. So now that we have the work group, we will immediately convene to begin learning about the process and learning about goal number 7. Now, this is goal number 7, and nothing has changed on this goal from the last strategic plan to now, except for I believe one typo in 7.4. So if you remember goal 3, this is exactly the same. So I'll let you read through that really quickly. I know we're at time, so I'm gonna just let you remember that this is goal 3, now move to goal 7. I want to also let you know that on November 19th, next Friday, in 6 days at 2 p.m., we'll be hosting our listening session to allow all of you who are out there listening to join in and have comments on these objectives here. This will be a listen-only session, so all your input, the work group will not have had time to do the work that the other work groups have done by this time period. So this will be a full opening listening session. This whole process is, of course, your opportunity to give us your thoughts on how to expand, improve, innovate, but also if you like some things that are already here, to keep some of the things that are in goal 7 and maintain them. I also want to thank you all for your participation. Many of you, this isn't your first time meeting me. I've been here for 10 years. I've been working with the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals. But before I came here, I was a water rights attorney for 10 years. And for me, as a Dene woman, I'm always looking at 7 generations forward and what we can do for our community, our students, and all our relatives. And so, I know that the generation that we're working with is the incredible 7th generation. So for me, all of my work, all my effort, all my love is for those students and for the generations to come. So I'm asking you, as we come together, let's come together as family. Let's work together, support one another, respect one another. And for me, if you have any questions that are coming up, I just want to say thank you for asking them. I always am open to questions. I'm always open to suggestions. But I just, if you have questions, email me. I'm easy to find, Anne Marie Chischili. And I just want to say thank you again. And I look forward to working with the work group. Thank you for volunteering. Thank you for all of you for being here. Thank you.
I want to thank Anne Marie and all of the other leaders of our working groups. I want to thank everyone who made time today to be part of this webinar, and of course for all the time that you have already invested, either through idea scale, emails, or some of the listening sessions, in making sure that our collective aspirations are reflected in what will ultimately be our strategic roadmap for the years 2022 through 2025. This video will be made available online for those that weren't able to be here today to witness it in live. So it will be posted on our strategic roadmap webpage. Just a few things before we close out the session. First of all, as has been repeated on many occasions today and before, the roadmap is really an effort to try to focus our attention at the university level. It's really an opportunity for us to communicate a value proposition and hold ourselves accountable to driving towards it. Of course, we will never capture in a short document of 7 goals and 3 to 5 objectives under each goal all that we do. And that's why it's so important that you remain engaged, because everything that you are providing to us in terms of ideas and suggestions and recommendations for our future work is being captured and will be deployed and utilized in different ways as we move forward. The university does much for the communities it serves, and it cannot be simply captured in one document, but we do need to, in one document, present a clear path forward for all of our stakeholders to understand what our value is and how we will, in fact, become a national leader in equitable post-secondary value. So please keep engaged, keep providing us your input. As we move the process forward, we will make sure that we continue to be transparent in the way that we are proceeding. We also are very appreciative of the fact that we've been able to accomplish so much in such little time, because the reality is that the imperative of our work mandates or requires the urgency of our actions. And in the process that we are undergoing, we are really articulating what our aspirations are in such a way that it will allow us, as we move forward to converging other work streams and other conversations, to make sure that there's coherence. And I'm speaking here specifically, for example, of when we get to a point later this semester in starting conversations with our Board of Regents around goals and metrics for the years ahead. Lots of work to be done, lots of good work already under our belts. Thank you so much. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the week and that you have a healthy and safe rest of the semester. Thank you for joining us.